In the dusty heart of Willow Creek, where the sun baked the earth like a forgotten loaf of bread and the wind whispered secrets through the sagebrush, a giant of a man known only as Big Jack rode into town on a horse that looked comically small beneath his towering frame. Folks said he was ruthless, a cowboy forged in the fires of the Wild West, with hands like hammers and a glare that could curdle milk. But on this sweltering afternoon in 1887, as he dismounted outside the sheriff's office, his boots kicking up clouds of red dirt, no one could have guessed that his words to the sheriff's young daughter, Victoria, would unravel a tale of hidden hearts and unbreakable bonds. "You'll cry, then beg for more," he growled, his voice like thunder rolling over the plains, as he handed her a weathered satchel that would change everything. Victoria, Vicky to those who knew her well, was the epitome of small-town grace, with freckles like stars across her nose and eyes that held the quiet strength of her late mother. At 19, she had taken on the burdens of her father's office after a bout of fever left Sheriff Harlan bedridden, his once firm grip on law and order slipping like sand through fingers. The town whispered about her, calling her the sheriff's virgin, not out of malice, but because she embodied purity in a world of grit and gunslingers. She managed the jailhouse, tended to prisoners with firm but fair hands, and dreamed of a life beyond the endless horizon. When Big Jack burst through the door, his shadow swallowing the room, Vicky didn't flinch. She stood behind the desk, her father's badge pinned to her blouse like a talisman. "What business do you have here, stranger?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Big Jack was a legend in these parts, a man who had wrestled bears in the Rockies, outdrawn bandits in Dodge City, and left a trail of broken saloons from Texas to Montana. His reputation preceded him, ruthless, they said, with no room for mercy. He had come to Willow Creek chasing a rumor of buried gold from a long-forgotten stagecoach robbery, but what he found was a town on the brink. Drought had strangled the farms, families were starving, and the sheriff's office was the last bastion of hope, doling out what little aid came from the east. Jack's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the room before landing on Vicky. He slammed the satchel on the desk, dust puffing up like smoke. "This here's for the sheriff," he rumbled. "Tell him it's from an old debt. And mark my words, girl, you'll cry when you see what's inside, then beg for more." Intrigued and wary, Vicky waited until Jack had lumbered out before opening the bag. Inside wasn't gold or guns, but something far more bewildering. Bundles of dried herbs, vials of clear liquid, and a faded notebook filled with scrawled recipes. Remedies, she realized, folk medicines from the mountains, cures for ailments that had plagued Willow Creek for months. Her father's fever, the children's coughs, the barren fields poisoned by bad water. How did this giant know? As she flipped through the pages, a note fell out, "For the debts I owe your pa use wisely. J." Tears pricked her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the first spark of hope in weeks. But beg for more. What did that mean? That night, as the stars wheeled overhead, Vicky mixed the first poultice for her father. By dawn, his fever broke, color returning to his cheeks like rain to parched soil. Word spread like wildfire through Willow Creek. The ruthless giant had brought salvation in a sack. Folks lined up at the sheriff's office, their faces etched with desperation. Vicky distributed the remedies as best she could, but supplies dwindled fast. Children laughed again, farmers tilled soil that promised green shoots, and the town buzzed with whispers of miracles. Yet Big Jack hadn't left. He camped on the outskirts, his massive form silhouetted by campfires, watching like a guardian spirit. Vicky rode out to him one evening, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. "Why?" she demanded, dismounting with fire in her eyes. "You're supposed to be ruthless. A killer, they say. Why help us?" Jack poked at his fire with a stick as thick as her arm, his laughter a deep rumble that shook the ground. "Ruthless? Aye, that's the tale they spin. But tales ain't truth, little miss." He gestured for her to sit, and under the vast canopy of stars, he unraveled his story. Born in the Appalachian Hills, Jack had been orphaned young, raised by a kindly herbalist who taught him the secrets of the earth, roots that healed, leaves that mended. But the world was cruel. A gang of outlaws burned his home, killing his mentor. Jack grew giant in body and rage, hunting them down one by one. I became the monster they feared, he confessed, his voice cracking like old leather. But your pa, he spared me once, back in '72. Caught me rustlin' cattle to feed my kin. Instead of hanging me, he gave me a chance. Said every man's got a spark of good, even the ruthless ones. Vicky listened, the unexpected turn hitting her like a sudden storm. Here was no villain, but a man armored in pain, his ruthlessness a shield against a world that had taken too much. As the fire died to embers, she saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the same loneliness that mirrored her own, hidden behind duty and strength. I cried when I opened that bag, she admitted softly. Not from sadness, but because it reminded me kindness still exists. And now, I beg for more. Not remedies, but your story. Your help. Stay, Jack. Teach us. What followed was a profound realization for both. Jack, moved by her words, agreed. He rolled up his sleeves, arms like tree trunks, and began teaching the townsfolk. He showed farmers how to forage for healing plants, mothers how to brew teas for fevers, and even the skeptical old-timers how to mend wounds with salves from the wild. Willow Creek transformed, barren fields sprouted with resilient crops, aided by Jack's knowledge of soil revival. But the true shift was in the people. Neighbors who had hoarded supplies now shared freely, inspired by the giant's selflessness. Vicky, too, found her own spark ignited. She organized community gatherings, where stories were swapped like currency, fostering bonds that drought couldn't break. Yet, as weeks turned to months, an unexpected threat loomed. Word of the miracle remedies reached a band of opportunists, snake oil salesmen from the east, led by a slick-talking charlatan named Silas Crow. They rode into town, promising grander cures for a price, but their potions were poison, laced with cheap whiskey and lies. When a child fell ill from their brew, the town erupted. Silas challenged Jack to a showdown, sneering, "You think your weeds can beat progress, giant? This town's mine now." The streets cleared, tension thick as fog. Vicky stood beside her recovered father, heart pounding. This was the climax, the moment where compassion clashed with greed. In the town square, under a noon sun that beat down like judgment, Jack faced Silas not with guns, but with truth. "I've spilled blood before," Jack boomed, his voice echoing off the buildings. "But that ain't power. This is." He knelt, a giant bending low, and handed Silas a vial of his genuine remedy. "Taste it. Feel what real healing does. Ain't about tucking, it's about giving. The crowd held its breath. Silas, expecting a fight, hesitated, then sipped. His face twisted, not from bitterness, but realization. The remedy eased a hidden ailment he'd carried for years, a chronic pain from old wounds. Tears streamed down his cheeks. What is this?" he stammered. Jack's massive hand clapped his shoulder gently. "Humanity, friend. The power we all got inside. Cry if you must, then beg for more, beg to give it back." Silas crumbled, not in defeat, but transformation. He confessed his scams, returned stolen coins, and begged Jack to teach him the ways of true healing. The act rippled outward, the bandits disbanded, some staying to learn, others leaving with seeds of change planted in their hearts. Willow Creek bloomed, not just in fields, but in spirit. Jack, once ruthless, became the town's gentle giant, his legend rewritten as a beacon of selflessness. As autumn winds carried the scent of harvest, Vicky and Jack stood on a hill overlooking the revived town. "You were right," she said, her hand in his enormous one. "I cried, then begged for more. More kindness, more hope." Jack smiled, his eyes soft. "We all got that spark, Vicky. Fan it, and it lights the world." In the end, Willow Creek taught the world a simple truth. True strength lies not in ruthlessness,